Chapter 1: The Best and Worst of Times. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, an age of wisdom and foolishness, a season of light and darkness, a spring of hope and a winter of despair. In this era of stark contrasts, two cities, London and Paris, stood as emblematic of the extremes of human experience. Both cities were alive with energy, yet shadowed by fear and uncertainty. In London, the seat of British stability and order, people lived under the rule of law, but social injustices persisted. Paris, on the other hand, simmered with revolutionary fervor, its streets teeming with the restless cries of a populace on the brink of upheaval. Amidst this tumultuous backdrop, we meet Jarvis Lorry, a senior manager at Tellson's Bank, a venerable institution known for its steadfast adherence to tradition and discretion. Tellson's, with its dark, dusty offices and air of solemnity, symbolized the stability and rigidity of the age. Mr. Lorry, a man of methodical habits and unshakable loyalty, embodied the bank's values. Though outwardly reserved, Lorry harbored a deep sense of duty and compassion, qualities that would soon lead him on a mission of profound significance. One brisk November evening, Mr. Lorry received a cryptic message from the bank, recalled to life. The phrase, enigmatic and portentous, hinted at a task of grave importance. This message set into motion a journey that would bridge the distance between the past and the present, between loss and reunion. The following day, Lorry embarked on his mission, traveling from London to Paris by coach. The journey was long and arduous, fraught with the uncertainties of the road and the spectre of revolutionary unrest. Lorry's thoughts were consumed by the purpose of his voyage, to reunite Dr. Alexandre Manette, a former prisoner of the Bastille, with his daughter, Lucie. Dr. Manette's story was one of unimaginable suffering and resilience. A brilliant physician, he had been unjustly imprisoned for 18 years in the notorious fortress of the Bastille. During his long captivity, cut off from the world and stripped of his identity, Dr. Manette had been reduced to a shadow of his former self. The man who had once been a beacon of medical expertise and compassion was now a broken figure, mentally scarred by years of isolation and torment. Lucie Manette, who had grown up believing her father dead, was thrust into a world of unexpected hope and fear upon learning of his survival. She was a young woman of remarkable strength and tenderness, qualities that would soon be tested as she confronted the realities of her father's condition. Lucie's love and determination would become the linchpin in Dr. Manette's journey toward recovery. As Lorry's coach rattled along the rough roads of France, he reflected on the profound implications of his mission. He envisioned the moment of reunion between father and daughter, a moment fraught with emotional complexity. He knew that Dr. Manette's release from prison was only the beginning of a long road to healing, a process that would require patience, compassion, and the rekindling of lost memories. Upon arriving in Paris, Lorry and Lucie made their way to a small, obscure attic in the Saint-Antoine district, where Dr. Manette had been staying since his release. The neighborhood, with its narrow, winding streets and air of quiet desperation, was a stark reminder of the hardships faced by the common people of Paris. It was here, amidst the shadows and whispers of revolution, that they found Dr. Manette. The sight that greeted them was both heart-wrenching and surreal. In the dimly lit attic, they discovered an old man hunched over a crude workbench, engrossed in the repetitive task of making shoes. Dr. Manette's gaunt frame and hollow eyes spoke of the profound toll his imprisonment had taken. He was a man caught in the grips of a psychological trauma so deep that he had retreated into the comforting monotony of shoemaking, a skill he had learned in prison, to pass the endless hours. Lucie approached her father with a mixture of trepidation and resolve. She called out to him softly, her voice trembling with emotion. Dr. Manette, initially unresponsive, continued his work, oblivious to the presence of others. But as Lucie persisted, gently touching his arm and speaking his name, a flicker of recognition sparked in his eyes. Slowly, the fog of his tormented mind began to lift, and he looked at Lucie with a glimmer of awareness. The reunion was a moment of profound catharsis. Tears streamed down Lucie's face as she embraced her father, her heart aching with both joy and sorrow. Dr. Manette, though still fragile and disoriented, responded to her affection, clinging to her as if she were his lifeline to the world. It was the first step in his long journey back to sanity and selfhood. Mr. Lorry, witnessing this poignant scene, felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but he was committed to supporting the Manettes in every way possible. The journey from Paris to London was undertaken with great care, and gradually, in the comforting surroundings of their new home, Dr. Manette began to show signs of recovery. The loving presence of his daughter proved to be the most potent medicine, slowly knitting together the fragments of his shattered psyche. Thus, the story began with a moment of extraordinary contrast, encapsulating the essence of an era marked by extremes. In the reunion of Dr. Manette and Lucie, the promise of renewal and the shadow of past suffering coexisted, setting the stage for a tale of love, sacrifice, and redemption. Chapter 2: Rebirth and Reunion. Upon returning to London, the Manettes began a journey of healing and rediscovery. Lucie, with her boundless compassion and unwavering dedication, devoted herself entirely to her father's recovery. Their home, nestled in a quiet, leafy corner of Soho, became a sanctuary of peace and love. The delicate balance of this sanctuary was maintained through Lucie's gentle routines and her ability to create an atmosphere of calm and security. Dr. Manette, though still haunted by his years of imprisonment, gradually began to find solace in the presence of his daughter. The love that Lucie showered upon him acted as a balm, slowly soothing the deep wounds inflicted by his prolonged isolation. Day by day, he grew stronger, his mind clearing like a mist lifting to reveal the sun. Lucie's voice, her touch, and her mere presence worked wonders, pulling him from the depths of his psychological abyss. Their days were filled with simple joys and quiet moments of bonding. Lucie would read to her father, often choosing books that evoked memories of happier times. She played the piano softly, her music a gentle reminder of the world's beauty. They took walks in the nearby gardens, where Dr. Manette began to reconnect with the natural world, finding comfort in its predictability and peace. However, their tranquil existence was soon disrupted by the ominous shadows of political unrest. In France, the revolution continued to gather momentum, and its repercussions were felt even in London. Amidst this atmosphere of uncertainty, a new character entered their lives, Charles Darnay. Charles Darnay was a French aristocrat by birth, but he had renounced his family's oppressive legacy and sought to build a new life in England. He was a man of integrity, driven by a deep sense of justice and moral clarity. However, his past continued to haunt him, and he found himself embroiled in a treason trial in London. Accused of being a spy for the French, Darnay faced the very real prospect of execution. The trial was a sensational affair, drawing considerable public attention. In the courtroom, the tension was palpable. Lucie and Dr. Manette, who had come to know and admire Darnay, attended the trial, deeply concerned for his fate. Mr. Lorry, ever the loyal friend, stood by their side, ready to provide whatever support he could. The prosecution's case against Darnay seemed formidable. They presented evidence that appeared damning, and it seemed as though his fate was sealed. However, the defense, led by the brilliant but dissolute lawyer Sydney Carton, held a trump card. Carton, whose outward appearance bore an uncanny resemblance to Darnay, used this to his advantage. In a dramatic turn of events, Carton called into question the reliability of the prosecution's witnesses, suggesting that they could easily have mistaken him for Darnay. His strategy created sufficient doubt in the minds of the jury, leading to Darnay's acquittal. The relief in the courtroom was palpable, and Lucie, overcome with emotion, expressed her gratitude to both Darnay and Carton. Sydney Carton was a complex and troubled soul. Despite his brilliance, he led a life of dissipation, plagued by feelings of worthlessness and a sense of having wasted his potential. His encounter with Lucie stirred something deep within him, an unspoken love and admiration. He saw in her a purity and goodness that he felt was forever beyond his reach. Carton's love for Lucie was tinged with a profound sense of unworthiness. He believed himself to be unfit for her, tarnished by his past and his own failings. Yet, this love drove him to acts of selflessness and courage, reshaping his character in ways he had never thought possible. Despite his inner turmoil, Carton formed a bond with Darnay, drawn to the man's integrity and the stark contrast he presented to Carton's own flawed existence. Darnay, in turn, recognized the depths of Carton's despair and respected his complex character. He saw in Carton a potential for greatness that lay buried under layers of cynicism and self-loathing. Their friendship, forged in the crucible of the trial, grew stronger over time, marked by mutual respect and an unspoken understanding. As Darnay became a frequent visitor to the Manette household, the bond between him and Lucie deepened. Their shared experiences and values drew them closer, and it was not long before their affection blossomed into love. Dr. Manette, witnessing his daughter's happiness, found his own sense of peace and fulfillment. He saw in Darnay a man who could protect and cherish Lucie, someone who shared her ideals and moral fortitude. The courtship of Lucie and Darnay was a period of quiet joy, filled with moments of tenderness and mutual discovery. They shared walks through the parks of London, evenings by the fire, and the simple pleasures of domestic life. Lucie's love and warmth provided Darnay with a sense of belonging and purpose, while Darnay's strength and integrity offered Lucie security and comfort. However, the spectre of Sydney Carton's unrequited love cast a subtle shadow over their happiness. Carton, true to his nature, kept his feelings hidden, choosing instead to support Lucie's happiness in any way he could. His love for her, though unspoken, became a driving force in his life, inspiring him to strive for betterment and redemption. The Manette household became a haven for all who entered it. It was a place where love and kindness flourished, a sanctuary amidst the turmoil of the outside world. Dr. Manette continued to recover, his mind and spirit strengthened by the steady rhythm of his life and the support of his loved ones. Mr. Lorry, ever the faithful friend, remained a constant presence, his loyalty unwavering. Yet, even in this period of relative peace, the currents of history continued to flow, carrying with them the potential for future upheaval. The revolution in France was far from over, and its impact would eventually reach across the Channel to touch the lives of those in London. For now, though, the Manettes, Darnay, and Carton found solace in their connections and the simple joys of daily life. In this chapter of rebirth and reunion, the characters experience the transformative power of love and friendship. Dr. Manette's recovery, Darnay's exoneration, and the deepening bonds between the Manettes and their friends illustrated the resilience of the human spirit. Even Sydney Carton, burdened by his own demons, found a glimmer of hope and purpose through his love for Lucie. It was a time of healing and renewal, a respite before the inevitable storms that lay ahead. Chapter 3: Shadows of the Past. Years passed, and the Manette's life in London flourished with joy and contentment. Lucie and Charles Darnay's love blossomed into a marriage marked by deep affection and mutual respect. They were blessed with a daughter, little Lucie, whose presence brought additional light and happiness into their home. Dr. Manette, fully restored to health and sanity, found great joy in his role as a grandfather, doting on his namesake with boundless affection. Despite the idyllic nature of their domestic life, shadows of the past began to creep into their present, threatening the peace they had so carefully cultivated. Charles Darnay, in his desire to distance himself from his tyrannical heritage, had concealed his true identity from his wife and her family. Unbeknownst to Lucie, Darnay was the nephew of the infamous Marquis Saint-Evremond, whose cruel actions had left a legacy of suffering and resentment in France. While the Manettes thrived in London, the situation in France grew increasingly dire. The seeds of revolution, sown by years of oppression and injustice, began to bear fruit. In the heart of Paris, a new wave of fervent revolutionaries emerged, among them the Defarges, Ernest and Thérèse. Once loyal servants to Dr. Manette, the Defarges had now become leaders in the revolutionary movement, driven by a fierce desire to overthrow the aristocracy and avenge the wrongs inflicted upon the common people. The Defarges' wine shop, located in the bustling neighborhood of Saint-Antoine, served as a hub for revolutionary activity. It was here that the discontented masses gathered, their anger and frustration fermenting into a potent force for change. Madame Defarge, with her relentless determination and icy demeanor, emerged as a formidable figure within the movement. Her knitting, seemingly innocent, was in fact a meticulous record of those she deemed enemies of the people, marked for retribution. The storming of the Bastille on July 14, 1789, marked the beginning of a bloody revolution. The fall of this symbol of royal tyranny sent shockwaves throughout France and beyond. The Defarges, at the forefront of the assault, saw the event as the first step in a larger campaign to dismantle the old order and exact vengeance upon those who had long oppressed the people. As the revolution gained momentum, the streets of Paris became a battleground. Aristocrats were hunted down, imprisoned, and executed, often with little regard for justice or due process. The Reign of Terror cast a long shadow over the city, its brutality driven by a mix of genuine desire for change and a thirst for revenge. Madame Defarge, in particular, was consumed by a personal vendetta against the Saint-Evremond family, whose cruelty had left indelible scars on her soul. Back in London, the Manette family remained largely insulated from the turmoil unfolding in France. Yet, the ties of history and fate were drawing ever tighter around them. Charles Darnay, despite his best efforts to sever connections with his past, found himself increasingly troubled by the events in his homeland. The plight of the French people, coupled with his own unresolved guilt over his family's legacy, weighed heavily on his conscience. Darnay's sense of duty and moral obligation eventually compelled him to take action. He received a desperate letter from Gabelle, a loyal servant who had managed the Evremond estate in his absence. Gabelle, now imprisoned by the revolutionaries, pleaded for Darnay's help, appealing to his sense of justice and compassion. Unable to ignore the call for aid, Darnay resolved to return to France, despite the grave risks involved. Before leaving, Darnay confided his decision to Lucie and Dr. Manette, revealing his true identity and the reasons behind his imminent departure. The revelation was met with shock and fear, but also with understanding and support. Lucie, though deeply worried for her husband's safety, admired his courage and commitment to doing what was right. Dr. Manette, whose own experiences had made him acutely aware of the dangers Darnay faced, offered his unwavering support and promised to use his influence to assist him. With a heavy heart, Darnay bade farewell to his family and set out for France. His journey was fraught with peril, as the revolutionary fervor had transformed the country into a landscape of suspicion and violence. Upon his arrival, Darnay was quickly arrested and imprisoned, his noble lineage marking him as an enemy of the people despite his renunciation of his family's tyranny. In Paris, the Defarges continued their relentless campaign against the aristocracy. Madame Defarge, in particular, took a personal interest in Darnay's capture. Her hatred for the Saint Evremond family burned with a fierce intensity, fueled by memories of the injustices they had inflicted. She saw Darnay's imprisonment as an opportunity to strike a decisive blow against the very symbol of aristocratic cruelty. Back in London, Lucie and Dr. Manette were devastated by the news of Darnay's arrest. Determined to save him, they embarked on a perilous journey to Paris, accompanied by Mr. Lorry. Dr. Manette, drawing upon his past experiences and connections, hoped to use his status as a former prisoner of the Bastille to appeal to the revolutionary authorities and secure Darnay's release. Their arrival in Paris marked the beginning of a tense and dangerous chapter in their lives. The city was in the grip of chaos, with public executions becoming a daily spectacle and suspicion hanging heavy in the air. Dr. Manette's efforts to free Darnay were met with a mixture of respect and resistance. While some revolutionaries revered him as a symbol of the people's suffering and resilience, others, influenced by Madame Defarge's vendetta, saw him as an obstacle to their quest for vengeance. The days that followed were filled with anxiety and uncertainty. Lucie, ever the beacon of strength and hope, stood by her father's side, her love for Darnay unwavering. She visited the prison daily, standing vigil outside its grim walls, hoping that her presence would provide some comfort to her husband. Dr. Manette, drawing upon every ounce of his resolve, tirelessly advocated for Darnay's release, navigating the treacherous waters of revolutionary politics with determination and courage. Meanwhile, Sydney Carton, who had remained in London, was alerted to the Manette's plight. His unrequited love for Lucie and his deep sense of loyalty to the family compelled him to take action. Carton travelled to Paris, arriving amidst the turmoil and seeking to aid in Darnay's defence. His arrival brought a glimmer of hope, his sharp mind and resourcefulness proving invaluable in the fight to save Darnay. Carton's presence in Paris also brought him face to face with his own demons. The city, with its atmosphere of impending doom and pervasive fear, mirrored his own inner turmoil. Yet, it was in this crucible of chaos that Carton found a sense of purpose and resolve. His love for Lucie and his desire to see her happy gave him the strength to confront the dangers and sacrifices that lay ahead. As the Manettes, Mr. Lorry, and Carton navigated the treacherous landscape of revolutionary Paris, the shadows of the past continued to loom large. The legacy of the Evremond family, the injustices of the Ancien regime, and the personal vendettas of figures like Madame Defarge all converged in a maelstrom of conflict and retribution. The stakes were high, and the outcome uncertain, as they struggle to protect their loved ones and find a path to justice and redemption amidst the chaos of revolution. In this chapter of shadows and turmoil, the past cast a long and ominous shadow over the present. The characters, bound by love, duty, and the relentless pull of history, faced formidable challenges as they sought to navigate a world in upheaval. Their courage and resilience would be tested as never before, as the forces of vengeance and justice collided in the streets of Paris. Chapter 4: The Rising Storm. The revolution had grown into a tempest of violence and chaos, sweeping through France with unbridled fury. The streets of Paris echoed with the cries of the oppressed and the clamor of revolutionary fervor. Aristocrats were hunted down, imprisoned, and executed with relentless efficiency. The once mighty symbols of the Ancien regime were systematically dismantled, and the Evremont estate was no exception. Seized by the revolutionaries, it stood as a stark testament to the changing tides of power. In London, Charles Darnay could not escape the pull of his past. Despite having renounced his aristocratic heritage, he felt a profound sense of duty towards those who had remained loyal to his family. Among them was Gabelle, the steward who had faithfully managed the Evremont estate. Gabelle's desperate letter, pleading for help from his prison cell, stirred Darnay's conscience. Unable to ignore the call for aid, Darnay resolved to travel to Paris, unaware of the perilous path that lay ahead. Upon his arrival in Paris, Darnay quickly realized the severity of the situation. The city was in the grip of a violent upheaval, its streets patrolled by vigilant revolutionaries who saw enemies in every shadow. Darnay's presence, as a member of the despised aristocracy, marked him as a target. Despite his noble intentions, he was arrested almost immediately, accused of being an enemy of the people. Thrust into the grim confines of La Force prison, he faced an uncertain fate, his life hanging in the balance. News of Darnay's arrest reached London, throwing the Manette household into turmoil. Lucie, distraught and determined, resolved to go to Paris and save her husband. Dr. Manette, drawing upon his own harrowing experiences, believed that his status as a former prisoner of the Bastille would lend him the necessary influence to secure Darnay's release. Mr. Lorry, steadfast and loyal, accompanied them, offering his unwavering support. The journey to Paris was fraught with danger. The roads were treacherous, filled with revolutionary fervor and suspicion. Yet, Lucie's resolve never wavered. Her love for Darnay and her belief in justice propelled her forward. Dr. Manette, despite the ghosts of his past, remained resolute, determined to save his son-in-law. Mr. Lorry, ever the pillar of strength, provided the stability and reassurance they so desperately needed. Upon their arrival in Paris, the Manettes and Mr. Lorry were confronted with the harsh reality of the revolution. The city was a cauldron of unrest, its atmosphere charged with fear and suspicion. Public executions were a common spectacle, the guillotine a grim symbol of the revolution's insatiable thirst for retribution. The once beautiful city of light was now shrouded in darkness, its streets stained with blood. Dr. Manette wasted no time in leveraging his status as a former prisoner. His experiences in the Bastille, once a source of torment, now became his greatest asset. The revolutionaries, who revered him as a symbol of their struggle, initially accorded him respect and deference. Dr. Manette's influence opened doors that would otherwise have remained shut, granting him access to the revolutionary leaders and the possibility of advocating for Darnay's release. However, the situation quickly grew perilous. The revolutionary fervor, while initially respectful of Dr. Manette, was unpredictable and volatile. The very nature of the revolution, driven by a desire for vengeance and justice, meant that allegiances could shift in an instant. Dr. Manette's attempts to secure Darnay's release were met with a mixture of sympathy and suspicion. While some revolutionaries saw him as a hero of their cause, others, influenced by the vengeful Madame Defarge, viewed him and his connections with mistrust. Madame Defarge, whose personal vendetta against the Evrémonde family fueled her revolutionary zeal, became a formidable obstacle. Her knitting, which secretly recorded the names of those condemned by the revolution, included Darnay's name. Her desire for revenge was relentless, driven by a deep-seated hatred that extended beyond the individual to the entire aristocratic class. She saw Darnay's imprisonment as an opportunity to settle old scores, viewing Dr. Manette's attempts to free him with cold hostility. Lucie, meanwhile, found herself in a state of constant anxiety. Each day, she visited the prison, standing vigil outside its grim walls, hoping for a glimpse of her husband. Her presence, though unable to penetrate the prison stone facade, provided Darnay with a sense of connection and hope. Lucie's unwavering love and determination became a beacon of light in the darkness, a reminder of what he was fighting for. Mr. Lorry, using his connections and resources, worked tirelessly behind the scenes, coordinating efforts to support the Manettes and navigate the treacherous political landscape. His loyalty and resourcefulness proved invaluable, providing a stabilizing force amidst the chaos. Yet, even with his best efforts, the odds seemed insurmountable. As the revolution intensified, the pressure mounted. Public sentiment, fueled by years of oppression and suffering, demanded swift and brutal justice. The revolutionaries, emboldened by their successes, grew increasingly radical, their methods more draconian. Trials became mere formalities, with the outcomes often predetermined. The atmosphere was one of fear and suspicion, where even the slightest association with the aristocracy could seal one's fate. Dr. Manette, despite his best efforts, found his influence waning. The revolutionary leaders, while initially sympathetic, were swayed by the growing tide of vengeance. Madame Defarge's influence, in particular, cast a long shadow over their proceedings. Her determination to see Darnay executed became a personal crusade, her will unyielding. The Manette situation grew increasingly dire. Despite the respect initially accorded to Dr. Manette, the revolution's momentum was unstoppable, its thirst for retribution insatiable. The delicate balance they had managed to maintain began to crumble under the weight of revolutionary fervor. The spectre of the guillotine loomed ever larger, casting a pall of dread over their every action. In this turbulent chapter of their lives, the rising storm of the revolution threatened to engulf them all. The shadows of the past, with their unresolved grievances and injustices, loomed large, driving the present towards an uncertain and perilous future. The Manettes, Darnay, and their loyal friends found themselves caught in a maelstrom of history and vengeance, their fate hanging in the balance as the storm of revolution raged around them. Chapter 5: The Tribunal of Blood. The Tribunal of Blood, a name feared and loathed by the citizens of revolutionary Paris, became the stage upon which Charles Darnay's fate would be decided. The atmosphere was charged with tension and hostility as the tribunal convened, presided over by a group of stern, unyielding judges whose allegiance to the revolution was absolute. The proceedings, far from embodying the principles of justice and fairness, were a chilling mockery of the very concepts they claimed to uphold. Darnay, though resolute and dignified, stood as a solitary figure against the tide of hatred and vengeance that swept through the courtroom. The Defarges, embodying the revolutionary zeal that had come to dominate Paris, were at the forefront of the prosecution. Ernest Defarge, with his stern demeanor and fiery rhetoric, and Madame Defarge, whose icy resolve and personal vendetta drove her every action, orchestrated the trial with ruthless precision. Dr. Manette, despite his own standing as a symbol of the revolution's triumph over tyranny, faced an impossible task. He took the stand to testify on behalf of Darnay, hoping his words would carry the weight of his own suffering and the respect he had earned among the revolutionaries. He recounted the injustices he had endured, emphasizing Darnay's renunciation of his family's oppressive legacy and his genuine efforts to make amends. For a brief moment, it seemed that Dr. Manette's impassioned plea might sway the tribunal. The crowd, moved by his testimony, murmured among themselves, and even the judges appeared to waver. However, the fragile hope was shattered when a critical piece of evidence was introduced, a letter written by Dr. Manette during his imprisonment in the Bastille. This letter, penned in a moment of despair and anger, detailed the horrific crimes committed by the Marquis Saint-Evremond and his brother, Darnay's father and uncle. The letter condemned the Evremond family in the strongest terms, describing the brutal acts that had led to Dr. Manette's unjust incarceration. It recounted how the Evremonds had exploited and destroyed innocent lives, their cruelty leaving a legacy of pain and suffering. The revelation of the letter turned the tide decisively against Darnay. Despite his own innocence and the life he had built separate from his family's tyranny, he was irrevocably tainted by their crimes. The tribunal, inflamed by the letter's contents and driven by a collective desire for retribution, swiftly pronounced its verdict: Charles Darnay was sentenced to death by the guillotine. The courtroom erupted into chaos. Lucie, who had been silently praying for her husband's acquittal, collapsed in despair. Dr. Manette, his spirit shattered by the turn of events, stood helplessly by, his pleas for mercy drowned out by the roar of the crowd. Mr. Lorry, his usual stoic demeanor broken by the enormity of the injustice, struggled to provide comfort and support to the devastated family. As the shadows of despair closed in around them, a flicker of hope appeared in the form of Sydney Carton. Arriving in Paris with a determined resolve, Carton was driven by his unspoken love for Lucie and his profound sense of loyalty to the Manettes. The sight of Lucie's anguish and the dire fate awaiting Darnay galvanized him into action. Carton's plan, though audacious, was born of desperation and self-sacrifice. He recognized the futility of appealing to the tribunal's sense of justice. The revolution's thirst for blood was insatiable, and reason held no sway in the face of such fervor. Instead, Carton devised a plan that would exploit the one advantage he had, his striking resemblance to Darnay. Under the cover of night, Carton made his way to La Force prison, using his connections and resources to gain access. He met with Darnay in his cell, where the two men confronted the grim reality of their situation. Darnay, though overwhelmed with gratitude for Carton's efforts, was initially reluctant to accept the plan, fearing for Carton's safety and the repercussions of such a deception. However, Carton's resolve was unshakable. He saw in this act a chance for redemption, a way to give his life meaning and purpose. His love for Lucie, though unreciprocated, had transformed him, inspiring him to rise above his own despair and cynicism. He urged Darnay to think of Lucie and their daughter, little Lucie, and the future they could still have together. Reluctantly, Darnay agreed, understanding the gravity of the sacrifice Carton was willing to make. In a daring and meticulously planned exchange, Carton and Darnay swapped places. The guards, bribed and deceived by Carton's remarkable resemblance to Darnay, did not suspect the ruse. Darnay, now disguised as Carton, was smuggled out of the prison, while Carton assumed his identity, preparing to face the guillotine in Darnay's stead. As dawn broke over Paris, the city buzzed with anticipation of another public execution. The crowd gathered at the Place de la Révolution, their faces reflecting a mix of anger, excitement, and a macabre fascination with the spectacle of death. Carton, standing in the shadow of the guillotine, faced his fate with a calm dignity. His thoughts turned to Lucie, the woman who had inspired his final act of courage and selflessness. In the moments before his execution, Carton's mind was filled with a sense of peace and clarity. He envisioned a future where Lucie, Darnay, and little Lucie lived in happiness and freedom, unburdened by the shadows of the past. His sacrifice, though born of love and redemption, was also a final act of defiance against the chaos and brutality that had consumed Paris. As the blade of the guillotine fell, Sydney Carton's life came to an end, but his legacy was one of profound self-sacrifice and nobility. His final thoughts, encapsulated in the famous words, "It is a far, far better thing that I do, than I have ever done. It is a far, far better rest that I go to, than I have ever known," reflected the transformation of a man who had found meaning and purpose through his ultimate act of love and courage. The Manette family, though forever marked by the trials they had endured, found a semblance of peace and hope in the aftermath of Carton's sacrifice. Darnay, reunited with his wife and daughter, carried the memory of Carton's heroism with him, a constant reminder of the profound impact one man's selfless act could have on the lives of others. In the heart of Paris, the revolution continued to rage, but amidst the turmoil, the story of Sydney Carton's sacrifice stood as a testament to the enduring power of love, redemption, and the human spirit's capacity for greatness, even in the darkest of times. Chapter 6: A Bold Sacrifice. Sydney Carton, a man often perceived as a wastrel and a dissipated lawyer, now stood on the precipice of his greatest act of selflessness. His love for Lucie Manette, unspoken and unrequited, had ignited within him a desire to do something meaningful, something that would make a difference in the lives of those he cared for. The news of Charles Darnay's imminent execution had galvanized Carton into action, and he devised a plan so daring and audacious that it bordered on the impossible. Carton's plan hinged on his remarkable physical resemblance to Darnay. This uncanny similarity had already saved Darnay once in a London courtroom. Now, Carton intended to use it to save him from the guillotine. The plan was fraught with peril, requiring precise timing, unwavering nerve, and an ironclad will. Yet, for the first time in his life, Carton felt a clarity of purpose that drove him forward with unwavering resolve. In the darkened streets of Paris, Carton moved with stealth and determination. He had made careful preparations, enlisting the help of Mr. Lorry and other loyal friends to facilitate the daring exchange. His heart heavy with the knowledge of what lay ahead, Carton made his way to La Force prison, where Darnay awaited his grim fate. Gaining entry to the prison required cunning and resourcefulness. Carton presented himself to the guards, using his resemblance to Darnay and a combination of bribery and deception to gain access. Once inside, he was escorted to Darnay's cell, the grim stone walls and heavy iron bars a stark reminder of the perilous situation. Darnay, though initially surprised to see Carton, quickly grasped the gravity of the situation. Carton, without wasting time, revealed his plan. He handed Darnay a powerful drug, urging him to drink it. The concoction would render Darnay unconscious, making the switch easier and reducing the risk of detection. Despite his initial reluctance, Darnay understood the necessity of the plan and reluctantly complied. As Darnay slipped into unconsciousness, Carton swiftly began the exchange. He changed into Darnay's clothes, ensuring every detail was perfect. He then positioned Darnay in a way that made it appear as though he was merely resting. The guards, deceived by Carton's resemblance to Darnay, saw nothing amiss as Carton, now dressed as Darnay, prepared to face the final moments of his plan. Carton, now locked in Darnay's cell, awaited the dawn with a mixture of calm resolve and reflective contemplation. The gravity of his impending sacrifice weighed heavily upon him, but there was also a profound sense of peace. His love for Lucie, his desire to see her happy and free from the shadow of the past, gave him the strength to face what lay ahead. Before the final act of his plan, Carton had one more act of compassion to perform. In the adjacent cell, a young sempstress awaited her own execution. Fragile and terrified, she recognized Carton as Darnay, but quickly realized the truth when she saw the gentleness and resolve in his eyes. Carton, moved by her plight, offered her comfort and solace in her final hours. The sempstress, touched by Carton's kindness, found a measure of peace in his presence. She asked him to hold her hand as they faced the guillotine together, drawing strength from his calm and steady demeanor. In these final moments, Carton's humanity shone through, his compassion providing a small but significant comfort to another soul facing the same fate. As the morning sun rose over Paris, the streets buzzed with the grim anticipation of another public execution. The Place de la Révolution, dominated by the menacing silhouette of the guillotine, was filled with a crowd eager to witness the latest spectacle of death. Carton, his resolve unshaken, walked towards the scaffold with the sempstress by his side, their hands clasped together in mutual support. Standing before the guillotine, Carton's thoughts turned to Lucie. He envisioned her in a future free from fear and sorrow, a life filled with peace and happiness. His sacrifice, born of love and redemption, was his final gift to her, a gift that would ensure her safety and the future of her family. Carton's mind, once clouded by cynicism and despair, was now clear and focused, filled with a sense of purpose and fulfillment. In these final moments, Carton found a profound sense of redemption. His life, once marked by wasted potential and missed opportunities, had culminated in an act of supreme selflessness. He had discovered within himself a capacity for love and sacrifice that transcended his past failures. The guillotine, though a symbol of death and terror, became the instrument of his redemption. As the blade fell, ending Carton's life, his final thoughts were of Lucie and the life he had helped preserve. His sacrifice, though marked by personal loss, was a testament to the enduring power of love and the human spirit's capacity for greatness even in the face of darkness. The words that had once seemed an empty echo of potential now resonated with truth and meaning. It is a far, far better thing that I do than I have ever done. It is a far, far better rest that I go to than I have ever known. The Manette family, forever changed by Carton's sacrifice, carried his memory with them as a symbol of hope and resilience. Darnay, now reunited with Lucie and their daughter, found strength in the knowledge that Carton's love and sacrifice had given them a future. Dr. Manette, Mr. Lorry, and all who had witnessed Carton's final act of courage were reminded of the profound impact one individual's selfless actions could have on the lives of many. In the heart of a revolution marked by blood and vengeance, Sydney Carton's sacrifice stood as a beacon of hope and redemption. His love for Lucie, though unfulfilled in life, had transcended into an act of unparalleled bravery, ensuring that the light of hope and love would continue to shine even in the darkest of times. Chapter 7: The Tumult of Revolution. As Sydney Carton awaited his fate within the grim confines of La Force prison, Paris was engulfed by the tumult of revolution. The streets, once vibrant and bustling, now echoed with the sounds of chaos and fear. The revolution, which had begun as a quest for liberty and justice, had devolved into a maelstrom of violence and retribution. The air was thick with the cries of the condemned and the relentless fervor of those who sought to reshape society through bloodshed. Madame Defarge, the implacable face of vengeance, was at the center of this storm. Her thirst for retribution against the Evremond family had not been quenched by Charles Darnay's impending execution. Driven by a deep-seated hatred and a personal vendetta, she was determined to eradicate every last trace of the Evremond lineage. Her next targets were Lucie Manette and her young daughter, little Lucie. In the midst of this turmoil, the Manette family, along with Mr. Lorry, had not yet given up hope. They clung to the slim chance that Darnay, disguised as Carton, could escape the city and find safety in England. Every moment was fraught with peril, as the revolutionary fervor left no room for mercy or hesitation. The slightest misstep could lead to discovery and doom. Meanwhile, back at the Manette household, a dangerous confrontation was brewing. Madame Defarge, relentless in her pursuit, had discovered their hiding place. She arrived, her face a mask of cold determination, ready to denounce Lucie and her daughter as enemies of the revolution. However, she was met by Miss Pross, Lucie's fiercely loyal servant. Miss Pross, though unarmed and seemingly outmatched, stood resolutely in the path of Madame Defarge. Her love for Lucie and her unwavering loyalty gave her the strength to confront the vengeful revolutionary. The two women faced each other, the tension between them palpable. Madame Defarge, with her malevolent intent, and Miss Pross, driven by a desperate need to protect her beloved charges. The confrontation quickly escalated into a violent struggle. Madame Defarge, confident in her own strength and cause, underestimated the ferocity of Miss Pross's determination. The struggle was fierce and chaotic, a brutal clash of wills. In the midst of the fray, a gunshot rang out, the sound reverberating through the house. In the ensuing chaos, Madame Defarge fell, her own weapon turned against her in the melee. Miss Pross, trembling and shaken, realized what had happened. Madame Defarge lay dead, her plans thwarted, her vendetta against the Evremonds cut short. The victory, though unintentional, was absolute. Miss Pross, though physically and emotionally drained, had succeeded in protecting Lucie and her daughter from the clutches of vengeance. As Madame Defarge lay dead, the streets of Paris continued to roil with unrest. The revolutionaries, fueled by a relentless drive for justice, or what they perceived as justice, sought out enemies and traitors with a fervor that spared no one. Public executions were a daily spectacle, and the guillotine claimed victims with a merciless regularity. The cries of the condemned filled the air, mingling with the sounds of marching feet and revolutionary anthems. Amidst this chaos, Darnay, disguised as Carton, made his desperate escape with Lucie, their daughter, and Mr. Lorry. They moved through the streets with cautious haste, every shadow and every figure a potential threat. The journey to the city gates was fraught with danger, but Carton's sacrifice had bought them a precious opportunity. As they made their way to safety, the contrast between the turmoil they left behind and the hope they carried with them was stark. The streets of Paris, a city in the throes of revolutionary fervor, were a far cry from the peace they sought in England. The Manette family, burdened by the weight of their recent trials, yet buoyed by the possibility of a future free from fear, pressed on. The city gates, heavily guarded and thrumming with revolutionary activity, presented the final hurdle. Mr. Lorry's resourcefulness and connections proved invaluable. He navigated the bureaucratic labyrinth with skill, securing the necessary papers and safe passage for the group. The tension was palpable as they approached the gates, each step bringing them closer to freedom yet heightening the risk of discovery. As they passed through the gates, the sense of relief was overwhelming. The noise and chaos of Paris receded behind them, replaced by the quiet of the countryside and the promise of a new beginning. The journey to the coast, though still perilous, was a stark contrast to the dangers they had left behind. Every mile brought them closer to the safety of England and further from the spectre of the guillotine. In England, the Manette family found refuge and solace. The memories of the Revolution, the trials they had endured, and the sacrifice of Sydney Carton were ever present, yet they also carried with them a renewed sense of hope. Darnay, though forever marked by his past, was free to build a new life with Lucie and their daughter. Dr. Manette, his spirit fortified by the love of his family, found peace in their safety and well-being. Mr. Lorry, the steadfast guardian, continued to provide support and stability, his loyalty to the Manettes unwavering. The shadow of Madame Defarge and her vendetta was a lingering reminder of the darkness they had escaped, yet her death at the hands of Miss Pross symbolized the triumph of loyalty and love over hatred and vengeance. As the Manettes settled into their new life, the echoes of the Revolution continued to reverberate through Paris. The city, still in the grip of turmoil, struggled to find its footing amidst the chaos. The ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity, once a clarion call for change, had been marred by the bloodshed and violence of the Revolution. Yet, in the midst of the tumult, stories of sacrifice and resilience, like that of Sydney Carton, shone as beacons of hope and humanity. The Manette family, forever changed by their experiences, carried with them the lessons of their trials. The love that had sustained them, the sacrifices that had saved them, and the courage that had seen them through the darkest of times became the foundation upon which they built their new life. Carton's final act of selflessness, his bold sacrifice, remained a testament to the enduring power of love and redemption. In the quiet countryside of England, far from the tumult of revolution, the Manettes found a measure of peace. The scars of their past, though deep, were a reminder of the strength and resilience that had carried them through. Their story, intertwined with the fate of a nation, stood as a testament to the enduring human spirit, a spirit that, even in the face of overwhelming darkness, could find the light of hope and the promise of a new beginning. Chapter 8: Reflections on Sacrifice. In the tranquil English countryside, the Manettes began the arduous process of rebuilding their lives. The horrors of the French Revolution and the trauma they had endured left indelible marks on their souls, but amidst their gratitude for Sydney Carton's sacrifice, they found the strength to move forward. Carton's memory became a guiding light, a symbol of selflessness and redemption that illuminated their path toward healing and peace. Lucie Manette, now safe in England with her husband Charles Darnay and their daughter, little Lucie, carried the deepest sense of loss and gratitude for Carton's ultimate act of love. The man she had once known as a dissipated lawyer, who had hidden his true nature behind a facade of cynicism and indifference, had revealed a capacity for profound love and courage. His sacrifice had saved them, and Lucie mourned him deeply, recognizing the depth of his feelings for her and the strength it had taken to give his life for theirs. Every day, as Lucie went about her duties, she found herself reflecting on Carton's sacrifice. She would often sit by the window, watching little Lucie play in the garden, and her thoughts would drift back to Paris, to that fateful day when Carton had walked to the guillotine in Darnay's stead. His final moments, filled with thoughts of her and a vision of a peaceful future, gave her solace. She would tell little Lucie stories about the man who had saved them, ensuring his memory lived on in the hearts of those who owed him their freedom. Charles Darnay, too, was deeply affected by Carton's sacrifice. He had been given a second chance at life, a chance to be with his family, all because of a man he had once considered an acquaintance. Darnay's gratitude was profound, and he felt a renewed sense of purpose, dedicating himself to living a life worthy of the sacrifice that had been made for him. He threw himself into his work, finding fulfillment in the simple joys of family life and the peace that now surrounded them. Dr. Alexandre Manette, having endured years of unjust imprisonment, found his mental health gradually improving in the calm of the English countryside. The presence of his daughter and granddaughter provided him with a source of unending comfort and stability. The memories of the Bastille, though never far from his mind, began to lose their grip on him. He found solace in the knowledge that his beloved Lucie was safe and that the sacrifices made by Carton had secured their future. The family settled into a routine, cherishing the peace they had regained. They would often gather in the evenings, sitting by the fire and sharing stories of their past, their hopes for the future, and the enduring impact of Carton's sacrifice. These moments of togetherness became a cornerstone of their healing process, binding them closer together and reinforcing the love and loyalty that had seen them through the darkest times. Outside their sanctuary in England, the horrors of the Revolution continued to rage in France. News of the ongoing violence and executions reached them sporadically, a grim reminder of the world they had escaped. Each report of the chaos only deepened their gratitude for the peace they now enjoyed. The stark contrast between their tranquil existence and the turmoil of Paris highlighted the profound impact of Carton's sacrifice. His act of selflessness had not only saved their lives, but had also preserved their ability to live in freedom and harmony. Lucie often found herself reflecting on the nature of sacrifice and redemption. She pondered the transformation that had occurred in Carton, a man who had once seemed lost and irredeemable but had found within himself the capacity for a heroic act. She drew inspiration from his journey, realizing that even in the darkest of times, there was always the potential for redemption and change. Carton's memory became a source of strength, a reminder that love and sacrifice could triumph over even the greatest of adversities. As the seasons changed and time passed, the Manettes continued to honor Carton's memory in their own ways. On the anniversary of his sacrifice, they would gather to light a candle in his honor, reflecting on the man who had given everything so they could live. These moments of remembrance were both somber and uplifting, filled with gratitude and a renewed commitment to live their lives to the fullest. Dr. Manette, whose own life had been a testament to resilience and the power of love, found a renewed sense of purpose in his later years. He began to write about his experiences, hoping to leave behind a record of the trials they had endured and the sacrifices that had been made. His writings became a form of therapy, helping him process the past and find peace in the present. He often spoke to Lucie about Carton, marveling at the transformation he had witnessed and the profound impact of his final act. The peace that the Manettes had found was not without its challenges. The trauma of their past lingered, manifesting in moments of fear and anxiety. But they faced these challenges together, drawing strength from each other and from the memory of Carton's sacrifice. Their love for one another, and their shared gratitude for the life they now lived, provided a foundation that could withstand even the greatest of trials. In time, little Lucie grew up, surrounded by the love and wisdom of her family. She learned about the man who had saved them, understanding the significance of his sacrifice even as she built her own dreams and aspirations. Carton's legacy lived on in her, a testament to the enduring power of love and selflessness. As the years went by, the Manettes continued to find solace in each other and in the peaceful life they had built. The memory of the revolution and the sacrifices made during that tumultuous time remained with them, a reminder of the fragility of freedom and the strength required to preserve it. They honored Carton's sacrifice not only in their memories, but in the way they lived their lives, cherishing each moment and finding joy in the simple, everyday acts of love and kindness. Sydney Carton's sacrifice had transformed not only his own life, but also the lives of those he had saved. His memory became a beacon of hope and a reminder of the profound impact that one person's actions could have. The Manettes, forever grateful, carried his legacy with them, finding strength and redemption in the love that had saved them. In the end, Carton's sacrifice was not just an act of selflessness, but a testament to the enduring power of love and the possibility of redemption. His memory continued to inspire the Manettes and all who heard their story, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope, and the capacity for great acts of love and courage resides within us all. Chapter 9: The Echoing Footsteps. Years rolled by in the tranquil English countryside, where the Manettes had found refuge and rebuilt their lives. Little Lucie, once a child playing in the garden, grew into a thoughtful and inquisitive young woman. She was raised on stories of the Revolution, the heroism of Sydney Carton, and the resilience of her family. These tales, shared lovingly by her parents and grandfather, became the foundation of her understanding of the world, imbuing her with a deep sense of gratitude and an appreciation for the sacrifices made to secure her future. Charles Darnay, now firmly established in his career, found success and recognition in England. He thrived in his work, which allowed him to provide a comfortable and secure life for his family. His past, once a heavy burden, had transformed into a source of strength and motivation. Darnay's life was a testament to the possibility of redemption and the power of new beginnings. Every accomplishment, every moment of peace, was a tribute to the man who had given his life so that he could live. The Manettes honored Sydney Carton's memory in their daily lives. Lucie, with her compassionate nature, often reflected on the profound love and courage that had driven Carton to make the ultimate sacrifice. She kept a portrait of him in their home, a constant reminder of his selflessness and the deep connection they shared. The family gathered each year on the anniversary of his death, lighting a candle in his honor and sharing stories of his bravery and the pivotal role he played in their survival. As little Lucie matured, she became increasingly curious about the events that had shaped her family's history. Her parents and grandfather spoke openly with her about the Revolution, the injustices they had faced, and the heroism of those who had helped them. These discussions were often tinged with sorrow, but also with a sense of hope and resilience. The past, with all its horrors, had not defined them, but rather strengthened their bond and commitment to one another. The world around them continued to change, and the echoes of the Revolution were felt far beyond the borders of France. The aftermath of the uprising brought both hope and sorrow, as the ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity were tested in the crucible of reality. The initial fervor of the revolution had given way to a period of reconstruction and reflection, as France grappled with the consequences of its violent upheaval. In France, the revolution's aftermath was marked by a complex tapestry of emotions and outcomes. The fall of the monarchy, the reign of terror, and the rise and fall of various political factions had left deep scars on the nation's psyche. The hope that had fueled the revolution was tempered by the recognition of its costs, the countless lives lost, the social and economic upheaval, and the enduring divisions within French society. Yet, amidst the sorrow, there was also a sense of renewal. The revolution had irrevocably changed the course of French history, laying the groundwork for future generations to build a more just and equitable society. The ideals of the revolution, though imperfectly realized, continued to inspire movements for freedom and justice around the world. The footsteps of those who had marched for change echoed through the years, a reminder of the enduring struggle for human rights and dignity. The Manettes, though far from the epicenter of these events, felt the reverberations of history in their lives. Dr. Manette, in particular, found solace in the knowledge that his suffering had not been in vain. The revolution had exposed the injustices of the old regime, and while its methods were often brutal, its impact on the course of human history was undeniable. He continued to write about his experiences, his work serving as both a personal catharsis and a historical record for future generations. In their quiet English village, the Manettes became a pillar of their community. They were known for their kindness, their resilience, and their willingness to help others. Lucie's compassionate nature, Charles' integrity, and Dr. Manette's wisdom earned them the respect and admiration of their neighbors. They often spoke at local gatherings, sharing their story and the lessons they had learned from their tumultuous past. Their message was one of hope, perseverance, and the enduring power of love. Little Lucie, inspired by her family's history, developed a keen interest in social justice and humanitarian work. She felt a deep connection to the struggles her family had endured and was determined to contribute to the betterment of society. Her education, supported by her parents, equipped her with the knowledge and skills to pursue her passion. She became an advocate for the marginalized and oppressed, drawing on the lessons of the past to inform her efforts to create a more just and equitable world. As she grew older, little Lucie often visited France, drawn to the country that had played such a significant role in her family's history. She walked the streets of Paris, now a city marked by both its revolutionary past and its cultural renaissance. She visited the sites where her family had faced their greatest trials and triumphs, paying homage to the memory of those who had fought and sacrificed for the ideals of liberty and justice. In these visits, Lucie found a deep sense of connection to her heritage. She met with historians, scholars, and activists, learning about the ongoing struggles for justice and equality in France. The country, still grappling with its revolutionary legacy, continued to evolve, its history a living testament to the enduring quest for human rights. Lucie's work in England and her connections in France became a bridge between the two nations, fostering understanding and solidarity. The echoes of the past, the footsteps of those who had marched for change, continue to resonate in Lucie's heart. She carried with her the memory of Sydney Carton, the man whose sacrifice had made her life possible. His story, a testament to the power of redemption and the strength of the human spirit, inspired her to live a life of purpose and compassion. In the peaceful surroundings of their English home, the Manettes found contentment and fulfillment. The trials they had faced, the sacrifices they had made, and the love that had sustained them became the foundation of their happiness. They celebrated the milestones of life, birthdays, anniversaries, and the achievements of little Lucie with a profound sense of gratitude and joy. As they gathered around the table, sharing meals and stories, the Manettes reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. They honored the memory of Sydney Carton, whose selfless act had given them the gift of life and freedom. The footsteps of the past echoed softly in their hearts, a reminder of the enduring power of love and sacrifice. In the end, the Manette story was one of resilience and hope. They had faced the darkest of times and emerged stronger, their bonds forged in the crucible of adversity. The echoes of the revolution, the footsteps of those who had fought and sacrificed, continue to shape their lives and inspire their actions. The memory of Sydney Carton, the man who had given everything for love, remained a guiding light, a beacon of hope and redemption in a world forever changed by the tumult of history. Chapter 10: Legacies and Lessons. The Manette family's story had become a tapestry woven with threads of love, sacrifice, and redemption, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity. As they lived out their days in the peaceful English countryside, they carried with them the awareness that their happiness had come at a great cost. The echoes of the revolution and Sydney Carton's sacrifice continued to reverberate through their lives, shaping their choices and guiding their actions. Their home, once a refuge from the storms of the past, had become a sanctuary filled with warmth, laughter, and love. Dr. Manette, now in the twilight of his years, spent his days tending to his garden and writing about his experiences. His writings served as both a personal catharsis and a historical record, ensuring that the lessons of the past would not be forgotten. Lucie, now a woman of strength and grace, devoted herself to her family and her community. She had inherited her mother's compassionate spirit and her father's integrity, and she lived each day with a sense of purpose and gratitude. Her love for Charles and little Lucie was boundless, a constant source of joy and inspiration. Charles Darnay, too, had found fulfillment in his life's work. His career had flourished, allowing him to provide for his family and contribute to the betterment of society. He carried with him the memory of Sydney Carton, the man whose sacrifice had given him a second chance at life, and he vowed to honor that legacy in everything he did. Little Lucie, the next generation of the Manette family, grew up surrounded by stories of courage, sacrifice, and resilience. From a young age, she learned about the revolution and the heroes who had shaped her family's history. Her parents and grandfather instilled in her the values of compassion and courage, teaching her to face the world's challenges with grace and determination. As she grew older, little Lucie became increasingly aware of the weight of her family's legacy. She felt a deep sense of responsibility to honor the sacrifices that had been made on her behalf. She immersed herself in her studies, eager to learn about history, literature, and the human condition. She dreamed of making a difference in the world, of following in the footsteps of those who had come before her. The Manette family's story became a beacon of hope and inspiration for those around them. Their resilience in the face of adversity, their unwavering commitment to love and justice, served as a reminder of the power of the human spirit to overcome even the greatest of challenges. Their home became a gathering place for friends and neighbors, drawn to the warmth and wisdom that emanated from within its walls. As the years passed, the Manettes continued to live out their lives with courage and grace. They faced new trials and tribulations, but they did so with the knowledge that they were not alone, that they carried with them the love and support of generations past. Their story, though marked by hardship, was ultimately one of triumph and redemption. In the end, the Manette family's legacy lived on in the hearts and minds of those they had touched. Their story became a testament to the enduring power of love, sacrifice, and redemption, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. And as little Lucie grew into a woman, she carried with her the lessons of her family's past, ready to face whatever the future might hold with courage and conviction. Chapter 11: A Future Forged by the Past. As the years passed, France embarked on a journey of healing and reconstruction, slowly emerging from the shadows cast by the tumultuous events of the Revolution. The scars left by years of violence and upheaval were deep, but the spirit of resilience and determination burned bright in the hearts of the French people. The Manette family, though removed from the epicenter of these changes, bore witness to the country's transformation, hopeful for a better future forged from the ashes of the past. In their tranquil English home, the Manettes followed the news from France with a mixture of apprehension and optimism. Dr. Manette, with his keen understanding of history and human nature, observed the unfolding events with a sense of cautious optimism. He recognized the complexities of the rebuilding process, knowing that true change would take time and effort. Yet, he also harbored a deep-seated belief in the resilience of the human spirit and the capacity for redemption. Lucie, ever compassionate and empathetic, felt a strong connection to the people of France and their struggles. She devoted herself to aiding those affected by the turmoil, offering her support and assistance wherever it was needed. Her efforts ranged from providing shelter and comfort to those displaced by the revolution to advocating for the rights of the oppressed and marginalized. Through her actions, she sought to embody the values of compassion, empathy, and solidarity that had sustained her family through the darkest of times. Charles Darnay, too, felt a sense of responsibility to contribute to the rebuilding efforts in France. He recognized that his family's legacy was intertwined with the country's history, and he was determined to atone for the sins of his ancestors. He used his resources and influence to support initiatives aimed at promoting justice, equality, and reconciliation. His efforts were driven by a deep sense of obligation to those who had suffered at the hands of the aristocracy, and he was determined to do his part to ensure that such injustices were never repeated. As the Manette family watched from afar, they marveled at the resilience of the French people and the spirit of unity that began to emerge from the ashes of the Revolution. They knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, filled with challenges and setbacks. Yet, they also held on to a glimmer of hope, a belief that out of the darkness of the past, a brighter future could be forged. Their lives, forever intertwined with the history of the two cities that had shaped their destinies, served as a testament to the enduring power of love, sacrifice, and redemption. They had weathered the storms of revolution and upheaval, emerging stronger and more resilient on the other side. And though the scars of the past would always remain, they carried with them a sense of hope, a belief in the possibility of a future where justice, equality, and peace could reign supreme. As they looked to the horizon, the Manette family knew that their journey was far from over. The echoes of the past would continue to shape their lives and the lives of generations to come. Yet, they faced the future with courage and conviction, knowing that as long as they stood together, they could overcome any obstacle that stood in their way. For in the end, it was their love for each other and their unwavering belief in the power of redemption that would light the path forward, guiding them toward a future forged by the past. Chapter 12: The Tale's End. As the final chapter of their story unfolded, the Manette family found themselves at a crossroads, a place where the past met the present, and the future lay open before them, filled with infinite possibilities. Their journey, marked by love, sacrifice, and redemption, had come full circle, leaving behind a legacy that would endure through the ages. The sacrifices made by Sydney Carton and the resilience of the Manette stood as testaments to the enduring human spirit. Carton's selfless act of love had given the Manettes a second chance at life, while their unwavering courage and determination had carried them through the darkest of times. Together, they had faced adversity and triumphed, emerging stronger and more united than ever before. As they looked back on their journey, the Manette family found a sense of closure, a feeling of peace that came from knowing they had overcome the trials and tribulations that had once threatened to tear them apart. They had weathered the storms of revolution and upheaval, emerging on the other side with a renewed sense of purpose and a deeper appreciation for the bonds that held them together. The two cities, London and Paris, continued their journeys, each marked by its own triumphs and tragedies. London, with its bustling streets and towering spires, remained a beacon of stability and prosperity, while Paris, still recovering from the scars of revolution, slowly began to rebuild and heal. The echoes of the past lingered in the air, a reminder of the trials and tribulations that had shaped their destinies. Yet, amidst the turmoil and uncertainty, there was also hope, the glimmer of light that shone brightly in the darkness. The story of the Manette family and Sydney Carton became a timeless reminder of the transformative power of love and sacrifice. Their legacy, woven into the fabric of history, would endure through the ages, inspiring generations to come with its message of resilience, redemption, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. And so, as the tale came to its close, the Manette family stood together, united by a bond that transcended time and space. Their journey may have ended, but the lessons they had learned and the memories they had shared would live on forever, a testament to the power of love to conquer even the greatest of challenges. And as they looked to the future, they did so with hearts full of hope, knowing that as long as they stood together, they could face whatever the world might bring with courage, grace, and unwavering resolve.